Welcome to the good, the bad, and the sequel Q&A. My name's Doug. So last week we flipped it a little bit so we can get the Angels in the Endzone out before the Super Bowl. Yeesh, that was not a fun game to watch, but Angels in the Endzone, pretty fun to watch, sort of. Even though they didn't know the rules of football, there was a lot of things that me and Jamie discussed. So if you haven't checked that out, be sure to check it out. After this week's interview, which we mentioned her name many times during that review of Angels in the Endzone, it's actress Kate Twa. And man, if you watch clips of it, I feel like I have to put the clip out there. She pulls out a Polaroid, and it's a photo of her, and it's right after she told a story about acting in London because she dropped out of high school at 17. She knew this was something she wanted to do. She goes over to London with her friend. Insane. So we talked a lot about that, but when she was there, she talked about like, oh, it's real like actors and you wear like an outfit, and then she pulls out a Polaroid without us talking about Angels in the Endzone, and she goes, how do you like that? And I'm like, you wore that on stage? And she's like, no, that's from Angels in the Endzone. And I'm like, oh my God. But she had a great part in the movie. She's in it throughout the entire movie. Talked about a really cool, episode, character she got to play on X-Files. And just it's so much about acting and the theater that she has. So she has in Vancouver, she has the Railtown Actors Studio. And then we talk a little bit about her, the Tempest Theater, where it's kind of in the outskirts, apple country, wine country, and really cool back and forth about, her trying to get people acclimated to an area that didn't have arts as much to the arts, and if there was any pushback, and it was a pretty cool conversation. She's doing great things. So many people, like you said, very young to old, they're doing it. And what I'll do is I'll put all of her information, links in the episode notes so you could check her out further. But man, Kay was awesome. She even dared me to do something in this episode. Really cool challenge, really to challenge my creativity. I'm not going to say it. I'll let her tell you and tell you more about her amazing career that's still going strong. Again, actress Kate Twa.
Did you grow up around Vancouver, like in the major city area, or no?
Yeah, I was born in Vancouver. So,
Wow, okay.
and lived there. I lived other places. I lived in England. I lived in Toronto. I was kind of all over the place. But yeah, I settled here in Naramata in 2019. I never thought I would live in a village, but I do indeed live in a village.
What was it? Was it just really at the point, like, I really need a change of pace? Like things to be slower down, not city life?
Sort of. I found myself, we shot our second feature film here. So I wrote and directed a feature film called The Orchard. So there's a lot of orchards and vineyards and wineries. It's all kind of, consumable. So when we bought our little cottage here, I just found I was reluctant to go back to the city. I found myself a lot more creative here. And then we found an old church that was just dying to be a theater. And so we turned it into a little black box theater.
That is awesome. Those are the coolest things. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, as far as creativity goes, I mean, having it on your own terms doesn't happen to a lot of artists, in so much that I can just write a play and put it on at my theater, and that's really important to me. So yeah, it's really good.
When you were in London, this is something I interviewed a couple of folks that started their acting in London, but over there they use like pubs. It's usually like more of the higher end pubs, and they do plays. They'll do like Sunday theater. The guy I interviewed, a girl at the bar was like, "Oh, you look like an actor. You should be in this play that I'm going to write." And they're like, really? And she's like, yeah, you're going to be the lead. Never acted before really or anything. And then he fell in love with it it's so funny, like how these beginnings, but I thought that was fascinating that over there, it's like, okay, we're going to do like theater at the bar for everyone.
I didn't do any theater in the bars. I saw a lot of theatrical events, transpire at the bars, but I didn't actually do any theaters in bars there. No. So.
So how did it all begin? What at what point, like growing up, was it doing like theater or watching a movie? What was that first memory you
No,
have of like wanting to go on this path?
it was always it started with theater for sure. I was very quite young, 12, and not a lot of artists in my family. In fact, maybe one painter. So it was it was an odd choice. But it was just I couldn't not do it. Like I had to do it. So I quit high school at 17,
Wow.
and moved to England. And I asked my mom years later, I was like, how did you let me do that? Like, and she said, I couldn't stop you. Like, no one could stop you. And I was like, wow, I guess that's passion, because I worked jobs and saved up money and moved to England to study.
Wow. Did you know anybody over there, or did you just like make contacts from like phone calls or letters? You just like went?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I went with a friend of mine who was wanting to be a journalist. And so we just, we were bold. We were just like, oh, I'll figure it out, no problem.
Yeah.
And then, seeing the Red Graves on stage and Ibsen's Ghost, and like, it was just like, that is what I wanted. And I saw a lot of underground theater too, not in bars, but I saw a lot of underground theater too, which really helped me fall in love with little black box theaters, that courageous. The stakes aren't as high if you fail. In fact, failing is kind of what you do in a little black box theater. I mean, that's what's encouraged, so that you can discover things. So that bit me, and then I did a lot of fringe festivals and that kind of thing. And I didn't actually start in film and TV until I went to Vancouver.
Wow. So how long were you in London? How long did you stay over there?
Until the Majesty kicked me out. I think I was there for 6 months.
Oh man.
I got a letter from the Queen saying, you know what, it's time.
It's time for you to leave.
But I went back. I went back, and I went to England, back to England. I went to Swansea. I worked as a fortune teller in Swansea, Wales for a while. And yeah, it's been a life.
That is amazing. So was it always after this? Obviously, you said like the theater that was like the bug that bit you, but was it always thinking of, wow, I love doing this, but TV film? Or how does that usually, because I know it's so hard. It's like obviously in TV film, for the most part, it's like financially it's a better thing, but you get more for your soul doing the theater. So it's a difficult thing to choose.
It's a balance, like it's, I think all actors really need to find that balance. And for me, I couldn't go for very long without doing theater. And it was, film and television was I love film and television. I love it. I love all of it. But in theater, you get this wonderful thing called rehearsal, that you don't get a lot in film and television. So I love the process of rehearsing and discovering, and that really means a lot to me. So it's something that I really encourage at our theater, for newer actors, or I stopped acting. You can probably tell from my resume. I stopped acting for about 15 years to teach.
That's amazing.
So people say, "Oh, you must have taken the time to have a child." And I said, "Well, no, I've got about a few thousand of them, but not who's with me." But it's lovely because our theater is in a small town, and we get visits from many of the actors that I've been teaching over the years.
That's
because
cool.
of that reason. They're doing a lot of film and television. They're very, very successful. But every once in a while, you just need to come back to the theater and cry on the floor for a few hours.
Yeah.
Read Shakespeare.
That's awesome.
Whatever it is. But it really is a balance. And so that's how I have survived for this long, in this industry.
Yeah, no, that's so cool. It's always, if you can give back, especially when you love something so much, when you can, obviously people that are taking acting, there obviously is some sort of passion, but sometimes it's like when when I was in high school and you had like a passionate teacher, it's like, wow, I'm really interested in this now because I kind of liked it, but this guy loves it. Like I had this teacher for like politics. I was like, I would never think about this stuff. It was like 2004, and he was my government teacher. It was like, wow. Ever since then, like into it, because I just remember how excited he was. So I'm sure your students, that's got to feed to them.
Well, yeah, and like anything, it gives you permission to really love something, and you get a lot of knocks in the entertainment business. There's a lot of rejection. There's a lot of the
No, yeah,
and being allowed to really love it out loud and big, that's really important, and that helps you survive the lean months and years, when you aren't booking anything, so that's always been really important for me, and it's always just been really. I mean, I can't believe I stopped acting for 15 years. If you'd told me that when I was 20, I would. That's never, ever, ever happened, but it did. And one of the reasons it happened was exactly what you were talking about. It was because watching them when they find their voice, watching them when they discover their emotional range, watching them read plays and go, I'm seen, I'm heard, I was saying these words and I'm connecting with people. That as a teacher, wow, there's not much like it. It's just, it's so human to get into a room together and, do all this stuff and be as passionate about it as you want to be, and then go out into the world and you can, you might not want to scream about how passionate you are, because I think there's so many people that. I was thinking about this the other day, like sometimes when I say what I do, like when I'm on a plane or something and I say, I'm in the entertainment business, or I'm an actor and director, but people go, oh, I loved that when I was in high school. And I said, well, what happened? Well, it's just not practical. And maybe it isn't, but seeing that sense of kind of loss in their eyes of like, and I always say, well, go to a community theater. No, it's too late. No, it's not.
No.
I had a woman audition for a short play that I wrote last year, and she was 81. Never been on stage. And she was so fabulous. Like so fabulous. Did she have all the tricks? No, but she had a big, large life, that she could just share. So it was really fun.
I love that. When you see that passion at an older age, I would like sign up for that, right? Obviously, I'd sign up for old age right now to be able to get to that age, but just the passion. Like I helped an actor, Larry Hankin, put together his memoirs, and we became like buddies. And he's 84, 85. And I just got off the phone with him like 15 minutes ago, and he was talking about all these ideas he has for a book. He just performed in Venice doing like a coffee shop. I'm just like, man, this guy's been doing this since he was 22. So for 63 years doing stand-up acting, and he's that hungry just to keep doing it. Like it's not even about the money aspect at all. He just loves it, and I think that's so amazing. Like you said, 81 years old, never did something before. It's scary. Like you can't teach an old dog new tricks, and it's so great when you hear stories like that.
Oh,
that's what I want.
Yeah, I've got a class starting in end of February, just a short workshop, and two of the men signed up. One of them's in his 70s, one of them's in his 80s, and I'm so excited. Like I worked with them a little bit. Now this is cute. So there's a lot of rural country around here. Like I said, orchards, vineyards. It's beautiful. It's really luscious and gorgeous, and there's a lot of farmers. And they asked me to come down to help them with a play they were doing. And I said, you know what? You probably don't want me. I'm sure you guys are doing great. I'll just get in there and I'll just, do my thing. And you don't need that. And they were like, he said, I think these players deserve better than I can give them. And I want you. And I was like, oh, you have my heart forever. So I went and I helped them a bit, and they were wonderful. And I didn't accept payment. So they brought me baskets of pears and garlic.
Oh,
like my favorite payment ever. A beautiful garlic. So isn't it? I just love it. It's so human. You know?
And it just reminds you of a simpler time, like, because that's how things were. It's like you do a service for somebody and they would give you like what their, bread, or, that's how it was. And it wasn't that long ago when you really think about it. Like a few
I
hundred
know.
years, that's how payment happened.
And yet it seems so shocking. I mean, because I'm from the city, right? I'm like, who's at the door? Who's calling?
Oh, I know.
It's my neighbor chopping wood for me, like what?
Yeah. Oh, wow.
So
When you had back, no, I never did acting. That nobody's ever asked me that. No, I've never done acting. I love comedy. I love talking to people. I've always loved doing that. And I did improv for a few years when I lived in Portland, and I did some like performing with that, and it was the best ever. It's the greatest thing. And we'll talk about like a drug, like when you say something and you had an audience and they're laughing, and it was just so much fun. Like, because you had your team that we practiced with, and then we would have like, you go for just like an open night. So you would like mix with other people. It was just, improv's like, to me, like it's such a beautiful art form, because it's like jazz, just riffing. And then what you saw, you'll never see again.
Nope. One
Crazy.
time only. One time only. I have such respect for improv. It terrifies me. Unless I'm in a character, like on a set, sometimes it happens. It's happening more and more these days that the directors will ask you to improvise. And I certainly, as a director, ask actors to improvise. I love it. It's hard. It's really hard.
No, it is. But, just you asking that, I think that's so cool. When it's like when you go to a restaurant and the head manager was like a busboy at one point or a waiter, he knows everything about it. I think that's so great. Whenever I talk to directors that were actors at one point earlier in their career, just you giving that little piece to that actor, they feel like, okay, they believe in me. Even if you don't even use that line, maybe you do, maybe you don't. But in that moment, you're like, all right, this person's got, they let me try something. And not a lot of directors do that. They'll say whatever's on the page, nothing else. And you're like, all right, you feel like a robot.
Yeah, sometimes. I haven't had, I've had a couple of bumpy experiences on set.
I'm sure, yeah.
For the most part, I've just been really lucky. Like, great directors, great actors, I hear so many nightmare stories, but I was able to somehow avoid them. So I'm pretty happy about that. But I'm also pretty tough. I can be pretty tough. So I'm not, maybe I didn't notice if I was being mistreated.
Yeah, right.
I'm just doing my thing.
Yeah. So what was the first time that you were on a set? Like when you go, so after London, you go back to Vancouver, and what was that first step to, because I don't know if it was Just My Luck, because IMDb's never 100%, or Robin Hood's. I don't know what your first credit was.
I think Just My Luck was the first independent film I did, but that was in Edmonton. My first television gig that was significant was a guest star on X-Files.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was intense, because I was a theater baby. Like I showed up in at acting class in Vancouver wearing little black slippers and a rehearsal skirt, and everyone was like, "Who's this?" Like, Molly Parker was there, and Nick Lee. Like, it was just like a. But I was a geek. I was a theater geek, and so getting that guest star was, I didn't know anything about film language, hitting marks. I didn't know how to read a call sheet. And at a time when that information was readily available, and I certainly hadn't studied it. But they asked me to be this guest star, and then it was a bit of a crazy casting, because I was religious. I can't remember which Amish. I was Amish. But I was addicted to sex and had to change from a man to a woman. And anyone either of us slept with died of cardiac arrest. I was like, you're welcome. But they had to find my twin. And that wasn't easy. And they found Peter Stebbings actually in New York. And yeah, it was wild. So we would like, he would be in this, we would switch from man to woman and sleep with people who died. That was my first real film television gig.
That's intense. And that was in Vancouver, right? That's where they used to shoot
That was in Vancouver. Hmm?
Yeah. That was
Yeah,
right after that. The boom was still going on, but probably when you were maybe in high school or when you were over in London was when all those shows, like it seemed like all at once. Because so many people I talked to that started in Vancouver, no matter in front of the camera or behind, you see all the same shows they bounce from, like 21 Jump Street, a ton of them that all at the same time.
Yeah, I was after 21 Jump Street, but yeah, the kind of 90s there, it's like you couldn't leave the house without booking a gig. It seemed like it was really, it was a different time for sure, and there wasn't as large of a pool of actors, of course. So you kind of saw the same 10 people at every audition. So it was just, it's always a whirlwind. I was really happy that my first gig was on X-Files because it was such a wonderful set to be on, like wonderful people, knowing that they're doing something, wildly creative, but really was going to be popular. So everyone was very professional, and there was a lot of sets in Vancouver that were, well, everywhere, that were like, walking onto a minefield. But like it's really like, oh, well, I found something to show you.
Oh, what do you got? That's what you used to wear to rehearsal?
No, that's Angels in the End Zone.
Oh my God. When you because you said the black shoes and that's the first thing I saw. Oh my God, that's so cool. You kept that?
I would wear this to an acting class?
I would hope not.
Wasn't that weird? I mean, I was weird, but not that weird.
Wow, that's really cool. That was just like the test, so they know what you looked like. That's really
they
awesome.
do it all digitally now, but we also, we get in costume and they take a Polaroid, and I just kept it.
That's cool. Did you keep anything from any other, like on X-Files, where you're like, okay, this is a big deal? Did you keep like scripts or anything that you could early on?
I have both of my X-Files scripts. I'm not really big on keeping tokens, but I just can't throw them away. It's fun. And I have pictures of Polaroids of Peter Stebbings and I as twins.
That's
So
cool.
they're somewhere downstairs. I've got a picture.
That's awesome. So that's cool. You did it. Obviously, afterwards you watch it and you're like, oh, wow, this is like a thing. And then it was like the next year, right? That you were back as a detective. Your next role.
I think it was the following season, and I was Gillian Anderson's protege. So, and I got sucked into a shadow by Gary Shalhoub. The best ideas, huh?
Yeah.
But yeah,
that's amazing.
Yeah, it was super, super fun. Are you an
That's
X-Files
cool.
fan?
I've watched it. I've talked to a bunch of people that are on it, but I think what's nuts about X-Files, I feel like even like in the Star Trek realm, not as crazy, but man, they have some serious fans. Like I talked to a few people that were on episodes, like one episode, and people like they go nuts for it. It was an amazing show. I remember watching it was on. It's probably one that I should go back and because I was not too young at the time. I watched some of them, but yeah, no, they're great.
Watch the Amish man woman sleep with people and have cardiac arrest.
I got to watch that one. I love watching old shows because I think it was so fascinating back then. Maybe because it's good that there's a lot of content now, because obviously there's more less barriers of entry, so people can get their work out there and be seen. But when you look at old shows, like you can watch any like Murder, She Wrote or 21 Jump Street, and there'll be like 2 or 3 people in it that that made it. Either they were big names or just familiar faces. Like everyone, it's insane. I interviewed this actress and I watched this 21 Jump Street, and like each scene, it was somebody that was like getting more famous, like now more famous. And then I forgot who her dad was. Her dad was like somebody. I'm like, how did this casting director just know all these people were, she maybe got lucky or something. They were just like heavy hitter after heavy hitter. But I think that's just so cool about those old shows and having the opportunity to see that many people. But even for you, so like when you're on that, like you said, you didn't know the lingo, but after that, is it always hard to get used to being a guest star on a set because you're coming there for like 1 or 2 episodes?
It's harder, I think, to be a principal actor than a guest star. So because if you have 1 or 2 scenes, because you kind of just get into the groove and then you're gone. With guest stars, generally, in my experience, you're pretty, brought into the fold right away, and that's been my experience anyway. Principal is a bit harder. You just kind of because you're nervous, right? And it takes maybe a scene or 2 to chill out a little bit and actually make eye contact with people. So I mean, I've never been a lead unless it was have I ever been a lead? Yeah, just my luck. I think it was a lead, but that was indie film. So
yeah,
but I love all of it. Like I love it so much. I love acting. I love writing. I love it. I love directing, and I love teaching. So I'm super greedy, which means I'm always pretty busy and pretty satisfied.
No, totally. Were you always thinking about, like, when you're even early on, like 95, 96, when you're acting, are you already thinking directing and writing? Is that already something in your mind? When did that come into play?
When I started teaching.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I directed plays when I was young, and I've directed plays my whole life. But I started teaching, and then my husband is a cinematographer, and so the combination of us together, like with me writing and directing, and him wielding the camera, that's when it became possible. Because we could just do it low stakes. Really super low budgets, do it on our own. I mean, I think those experiences that people have when they're teenagers and they're making the black and white film, I had in my 30s, and that was really cool for me to go, okay, these skills are somewhat transferable. Understanding the mechanisms of a play can actually work in a film context for me. And I love it.
No, that's cool. There's no, like you said before, there's no age to get into it. Like I used to shoot short films as a kid, and I always think like, oh, I got to do like another when I'm older. And it's just, there's no age limit to do anything. Like you have an opportunity now with like, especially with cell phone and the quality of it. There's no like, oh, I can't afford that Kodak, the film, how expensive it used to be like in the 80s and 90s. But it's like, you have the opportunity to do it. It's like one of those things, you just got to do it. Even like me, just kind of like talking to myself right now and just saying, Doug, just do it. Just film something.
Were you, were you like sci-fi, or what were you filming when you were a kid?
For the most part, it was, we loved like Mad TV and SNL. So we had a sketch show that was called The Later Than Late Show. And then we did like horror movies, because that was like that era of like, we always loved Friday the 13th. But it was mostly because of like Scream and all those. It was like, oh, these teens, and they were like a little bit older than us, but it was like, oh man, those cool kids. And so we kind of filmed things like that, but it was just so much fun. And we used to use, that's why when if you love something and enjoy something, we used to use the VCR camera. Do you remember that? You plug it in.
Oh, yeah.
And so we would use that and like just move everything around, like in my buddy's basement where we set up different scenes. So we like move the TV and like running extension cords. His mom would come down, seeing everything moves. But yeah, no, it's just so much fun to create. Like I do stop motion animation sometimes as like just for like fun. And my daughter like loves it. She always watches these videos I have on YouTube, these like claymations. So she did one, and it was like so cool to watch because there's so much that goes into it, and the payout is 10, 15 seconds. Like you could spend 20 minutes moving everything, and then you get this little bit back. And I think it's so cool for her to see, like, you put in work and you can get like this beautiful output. It doesn't have to be like instant gratification, which is hard in today's age to combat.
It's like just plop it into AI and have it
Yeah.
spit out. And yeah, that's a really great lesson for her. How old is she?
She's 6.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
So I have a dare for you.
Okay.
I dare you to write and produce a sequel to one of your horror films.
Oh, that'd be great.
That's the dare.
I love that.
Accept it?
I'll take you up on that. I accept it. I have some scripts that I me and my buddy wrote some scripts. So I have scripts, but it's just like sometimes when you're like, I'm writing this script for somebody in Hollywood's going to buy this. And then you don't think of like, okay, now we have to change it because if we're trying to do it, we have to change like the scene where it is and stuff. But no, that's I take you up on that challenge because I need to do that because it's just like, why not?
Well, it again, it's like I was saying about rehearsal. It's the process. What you're saying with your daughter with the animation.
Oh yeah,
motion. It's the process that's everything, right? So if you get hung up on what's going to happen to it or anything like that, and it's just like it stops that impulse to jump into the process, which you love. Right?
Yeah.
I have to tell myself that. Like I have to tell myself that all the time. I don't, this documentary is only going to be seen by 4 people, or it's like, no, it's fine. Everything is fine. You love the process.
Exactly. Like during COVID, that's me and my buddy wrote when we were kids, but then during COVID, it was like, what were we gonna do? So we do like Zoom. We're like, hey, we should write. And I remember like when we got done with like the first script, it was almost like, okay, what do we do now? And then it was like, all right, well, let's get some new ideas. So we'd set up like these times during the week, and just that, it was like this weird togetherness that during a weird time, like during COVID, and just being like I loved hanging out with my family, but it was good like having like, hey, the familiar face I knew since I was a little kid. So no, it's the process is definitely the more important sometimes,
I think so. And you remind yourself of that, sort of wild and creative aspect in your that you always walk around with, and you're like, oh, shut up. No, come on out and play. Come out and play.
Yeah.
And not even thinking about the result, like if we go into a class and we'll work on a scene and we don't ever show it, like we just are in the process of it, and that's really important, I think, because the gratification, the dopamine hit you get from instant gratification is limited, and so that elongated, I'm going to enjoy this whole 6 hours without thinking about what it's costing me financially or whatever. Yeah.
No, you're 100%. But no, that's good. So this is a great conversation. So here's something like theater-wise, because obviously you run the theater and you've been doing it for 15 years. Have you seen any change in theater as like a whole? Because of what we just talked about, like attention spans, and has there been like some kind of like micro theater, kind of like a really short plays that you run at your theater have seen around?
Sort of. I mean, we plays are nowhere near as far as I'm concerned, nowhere near as epic as 3 acts, Arthur, blah blah blah. And also a lot of plays are quite dated now, and I'm not sure how many more times we need to see certain plays that that depicted women as hooters, or like it's just like, okay,
yeah.
That happened, but we also have a lot of really amazing new playwrights. My favorite playwright is an American called Lauren Gunderson. She's lives in San Francisco. She's just written some really important plays, and she's very, very prolific. Like I think she pumps out 3 or 4 plays a year. But there's also kind of a reckoning. I mean, I wrote a play in 2023 called Malleus Maleficarum, which is I don't know if you know the book. Malleus Maleficarum was written by a man named Heinrich Kramer, and it was Malleus Maleficarum is the hammer of witches. So it was basically a handbook to locate, hunt, and murder women, and it's still in print, and it is and it's sat on the judge's desk for 300 years. So and it was just a kind of a wait a second, let's look at what witches actually were. They were people. They were most women, and so that's really satisfying to take today, the information that we have today, and develop a script around what you think is important. That's really good, and I think a lot of playwrights are doing that too. There's a great new play called John Proctor Was the Villain from Arthur Miller's Crucible, which he was a pedophile. I mean, he was a pedophile. He cheated on his, like, it's just like, and then all of the myths around witchcraft around that too. So I'm seeing a lot of that, but that's what I'm interested in.
Yeah, that's
right?
clever. Yeah, I like that.
And we did do 10-minute plays last year, which people love. We do something called a 1-minute play festival, which brings audience members up to do a 1-minute play, and there's a competition. They love that.
That's cool.
So maybe that is satisfying, but there's just really, there will never be anything like gathering with people in a theater for an experience. Watching this thing, it's only going to be this way this night because it always changes, and you're experiencing it together, and it really fills you with a sense of community and unity, even briefly. So I mean that is something I love that.
Yeah, because you're experiencing it with everyone. So if you have a full theater, it could just change. It's like even like the movies. Like the movies are so expensive now. But I think of when I was younger, like you see a movie it was like the movie was good. Like I remember seeing Scream 2 on Valentine's Day, and I remember just the place was packed on a Friday night. Like people were sitting on the steps, and it was like the anticipation of everything, the sounds from the audience. I don't know. But now I'm older, and I'm like, I don't want to. Not even just the money. It's like I don't want to hear people like talking, and then I get like so out of it. That's all I can think about. Obviously, people that are going to theater are going to respect for the most part. But you're right. Like that you're together with those people that are in your row, in your section, in like viewing these people. It's an experience.
Yeah, and you can actually, there's times and moments of theater when it's really working that everybody feels each other. The audience feels the actors and vice versa, and everyone is kind of mind melded together, and you feel like this, this kind of collective beast, which is super exciting to be a part of and to witness.
Yeah. So how did you meet your husband? Was it on a set, or was it just in the biz?
No, I met him 5 years before I actually had the courage to reach out to him.
Really?
We'd met, and we both kind of were like, wow. And then he's also a lawyer, so he went to law school, and I opened a studio in Vancouver, acting studio. And then I just decided, no, I think I'm kind of done with men. I just relationships. I thought, I think I'm just going to focus on me and my career and blah, blah. And then I thought I couldn't stop thinking of him. I couldn't stop thinking of him. And so I picked up the phone and called him. And then it was a matter of, long distance for a while. And then, he just ended up in Vancouver, and then we ended up here. So we've been together almost 20 years.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
He's very talented.
Yeah. No, it's a good combination. Like you said, like directing and you being the actor and him having being able to work the camera and the cinematography. So back to that photo that you showed, because at that point in your career, you worked on some cool stuff. Yeah, that's so awesome. I love that. So you're working on some cool shows.
You thought I went to acting school.
I really did. You know what it is? Because the first thing I saw were those black shoes, and I was just like, no way.
They're
Oh
actually
God, I love
cute.
that. Oh yeah, now I see him. Okay.
Um,
Oh man.
sorry, what was the question?
So how does because you Big Bully, which I'm sure a lot of these were a lot of these in Vancouver, or were there any
Yeah.
that you're going down to LA for all Vancouver?
Oh, Vancouver.
All
Yeah,
right.
I
So
when it came time for me to, you know, try to explore whether I wanted to go to LA or not, I started teaching at that time,
oh
and
okay.
I didn't want to. I wanted to stay. That was my choice. I mean, I don't. I thought about it. I've thought, do I regret it? But no, I don't think I do. I don't think that that would have been the right move for me at that time. And I really felt that it was important for me to give back. It just felt very important for me as a person and for the people that I was working with.
Yeah.
So I stopped. I stopped
Yeah. At least
acting.
you were somewhere that is always busy.
Yeah.
Vancouver. Even at this point, I'm sure there was always filming, but then once like Hallmark and that kind of boom started, then it was like people that lived in Vancouver is like, I'm just gonna stay here. Like everybody I talked to that is in Vancouver, like Gary Chalk,
Yep.
it's
Good, Gary.
yeah. This is so funny. It seems like Canada is huge,
Yeah.
but obviously that there's areas that people aren't living in. But it's so funny that the 6 or 7 Canadian people I've talked to, they all know each other. Everybody, it's like I'm like, oh yeah, Michael Benyere, and they're like, oh yeah, I know Michael. Do you know Michael
I
Benyere?
I don't.
Oh okay. But yeah, it's just so funny that there's like such this community. And it's like obviously a big city. I wish that's one thing I kick myself about. I never made it up there. We lived in Portland, Oregon for a few years. We just never made it up to Vancouver, and I got to go there one day because it's beautiful and it's
It's
been
it's
used
a
in so much to use so many landscapes in film, and you're like, oh my god, what's this beautiful place? And you look it up on IMDb, it's like, oh, it's Vancouver, and you're like, it's nice.
it's a gem. It really is a gem. And like I said, I was born there, and it wasn't. It's hard it was hard to leave my studio. I had Real Time Actor Studio with an actor named John Cassini, who you might have heard of, but
Yeah, I think so.
yeah, this character Italian guy. But it was hard to sort of leave that, but it was more attractive to me to come here a little bit more secluded, it was just me and nature and wine.
Yeah, and it's a good change of pace. You did the city, the fast for so long. It's sometimes the mellow. Like even we're like in the western part of New Jersey. It's definitely a lot slower from where we grew up. Like where we grew up, it was like super busy traffic. We're like really now it's like relaxed. I get to work from home, so I don't have to drive anywhere. So it's like
Oh,
very calm, very relaxing. But no, I understand. I totally get the change of pace aspect.
yeah.
It's good and then you can think more. You have more time to be able to, like you said, especially being creative. You really do need that space.
Yeah, and having I would never have been able to afford the theater that we have in Vancouver. It was just
Oh yeah.
an absolute impossibility. Vancouver prices are crazy. So when we found this little theater, I was able to, we built it, and then I pace and I think and I imagine, and it's my imagination gets to go all over the place. And really, it's really special, really special. And the community's kind of gathered around it. Like you were able to present productions that a lot of this community haven't seen that kind of, provocative play before, or and so we feel like we're educating each other, which is great, really, really special to feel that embedded into a community and that have them that interested.
Yeah. How did it take a while to get like quote unquote like accept it? Because you're like from the city. Was there anything like that? Like when you first moved there or no?
I think probably I didn't notice a lot of it, like as we opened our season was supposed to begin March 2020.
Oh, okay.
Our official season. Yeah, perfect timing, eh? really awesome. So we had a couple of years of, we did a few documentaries about, people in the community, that kind of thing. So we got to know people a little bit better as filmmakers, and the documentaries were really quite special. So we got quite, I think they quite liked us and for what we were doing. So then when we were able to open our doors, we did it with another original play called What a Mess, that explored the kind of cyclical, like a Greek remix that explored the cyclical nature of violence in human beings. How the Greek so violent. It was just like so, and they loved it. They loved that show, and so we've been pretty supported ever since.
That's
we
cool.
all feel like maybe you do this, you feel this way in your community too. But as artists, like we feel like we kind of we through the pandemic, we really bonded. Like we really needed each other. We had to find some form of being able to contribute to each other's lives in some way, or contribute to people that weren't artists, in some way.
Yeah.
So it always really fascinates me to see that happen, and the special bonding that happens because of it.
Yeah, I think that's one thing about it, especially when it comes to like just creative, just all forms of art. I think because there's so much that goes into it that you're not getting money for it. Like you really have to love it. Like there's obviously hobbies that people do, but it's just not the same. It's like it's like when you look at a writer's IMDb. Like I've interviewed writers before, and it's like you see this IMDb, but they're always working and they're always doing their thing. They might only have 10 credits over 30 years, but it's like, like in that span, there's probably, another 30 scripts or added 20 spec scripts. So it's like people are always working and honing their craft. Sometimes it just doesn't make it out onto there, but it's just, it's a thing that's why I think actors like you and your husband, I know he's a lawyer too, but like the cinematography, it's something that just people don't get. I don't think that's why actors marrying actors and people in the business. I totally get it, because nobody's going to get like, oh my God, I was waiting for 4 hours of my trailer, which it sounds, when people would say it out loud, it's like, you sound like, oh my God, you had to sit in a trailer. It's like, yeah, but you're sitting there doing nothing and you have to wait for somebody and you're getting moved. It's like kind of ridiculous, but people don't get it unless they've done that same thing. It's like, it's a very rare thing. And I think it's such I love creating. I love spending hours on something that even if I know 10 people will see it or one person will see it, I love doing it.
I can't wait to see the horror sequel.
The horror sequel. Yeah, I got to pick a good one. I got to pick one with not a lot of people. And no, I'll definitely do it.
I think that's really awesome. It's really awesome.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important. I mean, we talk about, interdisciplinary people that have multiple disciplines. I mean, I think that's really important. I mean, 4 hours on a set for me is like, oh my goodness, that's great. I can write. If I have to wait for the trailer, I'm always like, yes, just feed me, and I'll write. So yeah, I mean, it's. I think one of the biggest thing is that creativity for so many people feels so vulnerable. Like, if I'm creative, I'm putting myself out there. I'm showing a vulnerable side of myself. That I don't want people to dislike or attack. And so I think it just for all of us creatives, it takes a tremendous amount of courage. To start it, to stick at it, to keep going, and actors, of course, it's classic. You have all of these IMDb's, but that's how 700-800 rejections. Who knows how many rejections? More, probably. For me, it's like, even because before this interview, I looked at my resume. I was like, oh yeah, I wonder if anyone wonders. I've never thought about this before. Why is there a gap between 2005 and 2021? And then she does a bunch of love movies, So, but that's just life.
Yeah, no. And And yeah, that's why it's like when you look at the IMDb, it doesn't tell a story. Like I said before, nobody would know. Like, oh, she opened she opened a theater and she's teaching acting. It's like that's why it is like there's not enough time in the day to do the other things.
Yeah, exactly. I had to quit. I had to quit acting in order to teach. I just didn't want to be split.
Yeah.
I just didn't want to be thinking like my student would get an audition. I'd be like, what kind of, I didn't want that. It's like, it didn't feel right for me at the time. So it was just, it's been great getting back to it. It's been super fun. I didn't get back to it until I moved here. And, so it just sort of just during the pandemic, I got back into acting again, which has been great.
Yeah, no, that's cool. So this has been so cool because I love when I do these interviews and they become more of a conversation, which is something organic. It's not like I could be like, hey, Kate, let's just have a conversation like in the email, because you just never know how like people are going to vibe and the conversation goes. But just like a few questions about like the credits, especially Angels in the Endzone. I think that, again, that's like in my wheelhouse. It's just so funny when you think about, I could never imagine my daughter watching some of the movies that I watched before, because I'm looking at 1997 and I think of I saw Scream. So I'm like watching Scream and Scream 2 and then watching Angels in the Endzone. So I love Christopher Lloyd. I love the original movie. So like, are you at this point, obviously you have a manager. Are you just going to a lot of open auditions that they're having you, or is it something you're setting up, or you have somebody saying, hey, they need somebody down here for this?
No, I have an agent. She's in Vancouver, and she just submits me. So she'll submit me for a role, and I put it on tape and submit it, and then you just kind of put it out of your mind, and then hopefully you book the role.
Yeah.
And that's always just such great news, because I don't anymore. I used to obsess about it. Oh my goodness, I used to obsess about my auditions.
Really?
And then, I was obsessed about them. Now I just do them. I love it. I have fun doing them, and I just forget about them. But then too, you were always in the room, right? So you were always in the room with the casting director, often the director. These days, you're pretty much always just self-taping.
Yeah.
So there's
it takes an element out of it, right? As a director, obviously as an actor, like you want to work, but if you didn't like vibe with the director and the people in that room, maybe you're almost like, even if you did do great, you're like, man, maybe we'll pass. I didn't really like what was going on or how the situation was. But even as like a director or cast, how hard is it to like, you're looking at this flat image, like watching a video. It's like, there's nothing else. You can't be like, oh, can you try it this way? Or have that little like back and forth before the audition starts. So a lot gets lost, I think.
I think it's a huge deal, Doug. I really do, because a number of things. You nailed it. Number one, you can't redirect the actor. So you can't see if that's all they're able to do, or if they're locked in, they're not going to be malleable. Two, you don't know how many times they shot that audition. They could have shot it 100 times, which means, maybe they're not as capable on set as they looked in that audition, because they've done it so many times. So there has been awkward moments where people have been on set and it's like, what, why did you hire this person? They're like, great tape. You're like, what? Because you can't, So I think me as a director, I would always, unless I know so many actors that I don't really, I just kind of offer things to people because I know I've taught them and I know exactly what they're like. But I think it's a big deal for a lot of directors to get not what they hope for. So I would want,
like, for the vibe of characters and like how people gel, because that's how some movies and TV shows are great. Like they could be great actors or great actresses, but are they great together? You could put the funniest people in the world in a a 4-person sitcom like a Seinfeld. You could have these these are the funniest people in the world. It's like, oh, it just doesn't work because they're not meant to. They're not puzzle pieces that you can't jam them together. They have to fit. So I'm sure there's so many of that. It's like, yeah, this is frustrating not having these people, but to save that money, they don't want to bring people. I don't know.
I think for a sitcom or something that they would definitely bring the actors together to see, because you can't.
No, totally, yeah.
But for these, just for convenience, it's like wow. It's you got to kind of roll the dice and maybe make some phone calls, ask around. What's it like?
Yeah. So do you have any favorite roles that you had over the years? Is there some that you look back and you're like, man, I'm so happy I got to play that? Or one that you remember was like really like well received, or that when you saw it, you're like, oh my God, that's me. And you almost like, whoa.
I think because it was so early in my career, I think that the X-Files.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah. That's hard to, when you start in something like that early on. Yeah.
And you just learn so much, I was like Bambi. I was just like, wow. And that does what? Wow. And I loved it. And I think I watched it. I don't know. I can't, I'm one of those that it's not easy to watch my stuff. But I just really, I love X-Files. I remember also at one point I can't remember what the show was, or even I was playing a security guard in an airport.
Oh, I think I just saw that on here. Quarantine?
Yeah, that was
it. That was a TV movie. Was that it?
Yeah, I think that was it. And I was really down. I'd missed a lot. I didn't get cast in a lot of auditions, and I took this part because rent was due, all of that stuff, and they were going to pay my rate, blah, blah, blah. And I was just really sad, and I didn't want to be in the uniform, and I didn't want to be there. And then it was just like we wrapped, and I just pulled the mic off, and I'm trying to get out of there. And Natasha Kinski ran up to me. Ran up to me, kissed me on both cheeks, and she said, "You are wonderful. Hang in there." And I was like,
"Oh my God,
you didn't have to do that. I'm not even like, I'm barely in the movie." But I think she just sensed that I was an actor that was kind of down. And anyway, I thought that was pretty. I've had so many special moments. There's so many that I loved directing. The Orchard, I loved directing, which is my film. I love directing Gods of Youth, which is Kids in Crystal Meth, which is, a really fun subject matter. But I was able to work with actors that I had taught. So there was this communication between us that is really hard to build that kind of relationship in short periods of time, but we'd known each other for a long period of time. So I was able to allow them to improv. I would say to them, this is where the scene is beginning, and this is where I want you to end. This is what I need to have happen. You make it happen. And so we shot a lot of footage, but it was super fun. When you have that kind of trusting relationship between actor and director, that there's nothing like it. You feel like you're invincible.
That's like Curb Your Enthusiasm. That's what he does. He gives people like a little piece of paper and doesn't say anything else.
Yeah.
Like very, very vague. Like Larry was, he knew Larry Hankin, knew Larry David from when Larry was on a couple Seinfeld episodes. And they gave him a thing. It said, don't let Larry on the elevator. That's all the piece of paper he had. So he took that as that's what it was. He didn't think eventually he had to let him on. And Larry Hankin was good buddies with Jeff Garlin from like stand up and like the late 80s. And he never let him on. And then Jeff Garlin followed into the parking lot after the audition and said, why wouldn't you let him in the elevator? He like just kept blocking him. Every time he kept hitting the door, he like blocked him from getting on, and he just wouldn't give up. He wouldn't like, because he didn't know, because he read it literally. But yeah, no, it's so great because the improvising of the scene and giving the actors that freedom to, hey, whatever gets me, I need you to get here. And however you get there, it's a beautiful thing.
forces you to be so present because you can learn your
Oh
lines,
yeah,
and then you stop listening. You know,
totally.
so you and if you're not listening, you lose half the scene. It's just gone. You know, so being on the edge a little bit, like in theater when somebody messes up, all the audience pretty much always goes, I'm back. I'm so with you. How are
Yeah,
you gonna
yeah,
get up?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man, I'm
Yeah.
looking at that IMDb, and right next to Natasha Kinski, Gary Chalk on the
Oh, of
IMDb.
course. Yeah, of
Yeah,
course it was
Gary was
scary.
in that. So how did you getting back into acting? Was that just you were like, hey, you know what? I want to give it a shot, or somebody reach out to you like for Snowden for Christmas? I don't know if that was the first one or serving up the holidays.
I think it was serving up the holiday. I was actually the casting director in town in this Kelowna, which is the city where a lot of these movies are shot now. She reached out to me knowing that I'd moved here and asked me if I'd audition, and I said no. And then I think she asked me again. I'm not sure why. And I thought, why not? I mean, that's silly. Like these movies are so low stress. They're super fun. They're always in a good mood. Because it's Christmas.
Always, everyone's gonna get a
Always.
good movie. Yeah, yeah.
August and it's 50 degrees out, but it's Christmas. Um, uh, so I started doing them, and then it was just I have a blast. The cast is always fun, and the crew I love. You know, I may direct one or two eventually. I'm not totally sure yet, but yeah, it's fun. I'm still auditioning for some things in Vancouver,
Nice.
which is great. I would just travel out there. I shot some stuff in Vancouver in whitewater rafting. We went whitewater rafting in Squamish. That was amazing.
Really?
Yeah, we actually got to whitewater raft. When I got the part, I was like, yes. But I'd never been whitewater rafting before, so it was
So
good.
did you tell them you never been water rafting, or
Oh
did
yeah,
you say,
nobody had.
"Oh, okay, good"? I was gonna
No,
say.
I kind of got nailed on ice skating with that lie though. But I did ice skate when I was a kid, but I forgot that I was, you know, it had been 40 years, and I was like, you know,
It's
and
like riding a
falling.
bike. When was the last time you rode a bike? Or out there, do you have bikes?
Yeah, we do.
Okay, I was gonna say, when you don't ride a bike for a while, and then maybe like you have a few, and then you're on like a beach cruiser, it's like the scariest thing. We were in Miami and for like a work trip, and we were like, let's ride bikes, let's do this. And it was like fine for a little bit, and then I'm like, this is like hard. We did this for hours as kids. And it's like, how does it just doesn't work like that. And it's hard to, it's really like, they say it's like riding a bike. I don't know about that. It's not as easy as it is after you get a break for 20
Yeah.
years.
And and the thing about ice skating is, I don't know, maybe you fell down on the bike too, but I practiced before we shot, obviously.
Yeah.
And, you know, get out there and wipe out. And then all of a sudden, any false confidence that you thought you had, it is gone. And then you put a camera on you, and it's, you know, it's freezing and everyone's so tired and grumpy and the shot's on you and you're supposed to do this thing. And it's like the pressure is, man, give me a Shakespeare monologue any day, but man, any kind of physical, you know, anything sporty or physical. That's
Has that happened any other times that you've done that? Like, they say, hey, do you know how to, and you're like, oh yeah, I can do that.
I don't think so. I remember on Outer Limits, I had to eat my hand. And I had to get this really technical dialogue out and then eat my hand. And I couldn't, I couldn't, because I was so worried about eating my hand or something. I was trying to get the dialogue out, and it was just embarrassing. And it was a massive set. And thank goodness the director was very patient with me. But yeah, I think when you have really technical dialogue, that that is the hardest for me. Again, give me Shakespeare any day, but technical,
Yeah.
ugh. And
Yeah. This has been so much fun. I always love asking actors this. Do you have like if there was a type of like dream role or like a genre that you'd want to, if you had the chance, like, hey, here's the money, you could be the lead, or is there any type that you'd want to do? Like, is there a rom-com, drama,
well, I do a lot of rom.
comedy?
I I love comedy and I love drama. I love, I love Toni Collette. I mean, I would think I would
Oh, yeah.
I would I'm auditioning for something tomorrow that has Melissa McCarthy in it, and it makes my knees weak to think about in a room with her and Clive Owen. Like, it just makes my knees weak. Because I admire them so much. Toni Collette, I admire her so much. Yeah, I've really been able to play a lot of roles on stage. So, like last year, I played Marie Curie in the Half-Life of
nice.
Marie Curie, which was really fascinating because the research is just so much fun. So, I all of it. I'm not big on sci-fi. I love fantasy. Sci-fi. I mean, I do it, but it's just not something that I really want.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know if like what you watch, but I've been watching Shrinking and Somebody Somewhere. Somebody Somewhere.
I gotta watch Shrinking. That looks really good.
Oh, it's so fun. It's so funny. But being, I think, in an ensemble like that, being able to do a series, an entire series, and really get to know everyone, that would be my dream.
Oh, totally. Yeah. And Ted McGinley, I love that guy. And I love that he's having like such a, not a resurgence because he's always working, but it's always great when you see those people. And it's like, that guy's so good.
But he's got that lead role in that with this incredible cast around him, right?
Yeah.
Hang on, I just got to grab noodle.
Yeah, no problem.
Oh, yeah.
No, that is cool when you watch series, like when you go back and watch them again. Like Modern Family is one that I think is like one of the most cleverly written shows. Like everything's funny, and it's so great how it builds up, and it's just so good. But no, I always love to ask folks that. And obviously, this is something that you were always going to do. But was there any other career early on? I know, obviously, you left at 17, go to London because you want to do this. But was there any other career that you had that, you know what, if this, I know you didn't have a negative thought about it because you were so like tunnel vision, this is what I'm going to do. Would you ever have any other career paths that you thought of? No?
Nothing. No, I would have been hooped. I mean, it would have been tragic if I hadn't been able to, like I would have been depressed, like, but again, I wasn't willing to not do it. Right.
Yeah.
That just wasn't an option. It wasn't an option for me because living without it would just have been too sad for me. So I fought and I was scrappy,
You gotta be.
High school and moved to London when I was 17. Like,
yeah, that's insane.
God.
That's
But
insane.
I guess that's passion, right? Like, I guess that's, for better or for worse, could I have been something else? Probably, but I don't like to think that what my life would have been like. I would have missed this my whole life. I would have just longed for it. And I don't want to do that.
And to do that at 17, like that's something. To go somewhere that is that far away. It's not like it's like, even if you were 17 and dropped out and went to like LA, that's crazy. But to go to London, like a whole nother country, that's intense.
But we figured it out. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, I think I was there for just a few days when someone sadly was killed down the street and we were interrogated.
Oh my God.
For murder. Like,
and you guys just moved here?
Yeah.
Where were you last night?
The whole time I'm like, oh, I'm trying to do his accent. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh man, but no, it's like that fight or flight. You're over there. It's like, well, I'm this far, and it's like
Yeah.
you just got to keep pushing. But yes, that's usually no. It's usually asking folks their dream role. This has been so much fun. I
Yeah.
love finding out about folks' journey. Again, it's not like thinking about the credits, because I think just to get to that first credit is like such a, obviously there's roller coasters like throughout the career, like big moments, getting different things. But I think just getting to that first, everybody's journey is like, obviously it's successful, the people I talk to, because they get to that first credit, but it's always so different. And I think that is my favorite thing about talking to folks, is that origin story. And maybe like it kind of fuels me. And then for that horror sequel that I was dared, but
You
no,
accepted
this is
it.
awesome.
You
Yeah.
accepted it. It was really fun talking to you, Doug. I really, really enjoyed this conversation.
Challenge me, so I gotta make a sequel. I was thinking I've been really thinking about this since this interview like 3 weeks ago. Maybe I just do something. I don't know about a sequel. I love the slashers. Try to do like a little short. I used to do a few noirs. So Kate, challenge accepted once again, and I will do it. So yeah, so that was cool. Man, so much fun. Like I said, I'll put the links to all of her stuff, her theater group, her theater, her The Tempest, everything. I'll be sure to put it in the episode notes along with her social media. Great person. That was a lot of fun. And then boom, back-to-back interviews. You got back-to-back reviews a few weeks ago. Now back-to-back interviews. We go from Kate Twa to writer and sometimes actor in his own movies, Todd Farmer. So Todd's somebody we have sort of a connection with, just because the movies that we covered and the people that we've talked to since we've been doing this for 6 years. When we covered Jason X, Jason Goes to Space, we talked a lot about Todd. You know, he's a writer of that movie. The challenges of getting the job to write a sequel. And guess what? It has to fit into... It can't mess up the normal timeline, because we can't mess with Freddy vs. Jason. So what are you going to do? And it's like, oh, man. But we talked about that. Talked about writing sequels, writing remakes, and really how you think of the old one and what to acclimate or update for the new one, and also the spins you put on it. And director and editor Patrick Lusser, we talked to about Scream, all the Scream movies, working with Wes Craven. And he directed My Bloody Valentine. And Todd wrote it. So they have a connection. They worked with each other on a few films. Hopefully they get to the sequel to that movie that they already have kind of thought out and planned out, and have some people interested in coming back. So yeah, Todd was cool. We did this interview. He's living in an old castle in Europe. And there's like, when they moved in, there was a bunch of weird dolls. So maybe there's a doll movie in the future. Todd is the man to write it for you, and lots of fun. So so you got a lot of good content coming up, and for him, we're gonna cover a sequel that he wrote. Of course, we're gonna cover a sequel, Scarecrows 2. It's on Tubi, of course, our favorite thing in the whole wide world. So I'll be sure to mention that again when Todd's interview comes out. But so don't forget to review, rate, share our podcast, follow us on all social media at Sequels Only. And don't forget to check our website, sequelsonly.com. Good night.
Good night.
Good night, guys.